Are we ready? Okay, we're ready, Julia.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Good morning, everyone, to the Community and Economic Development Authority meeting for September 24, 2020. The first thing in our agenda is to call this meeting to order and to do a roll call.
Okay, Arata Frada,
Here.
Clary is excused absence. Gallegos Valles is excused absence. Hamilton?
Here.
Hardy? Here. Maldonado?
Here.
Potts?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Next in our agenda is the approval of the minutes for the July 23rd meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any question? All those in favor of the minutes for July 23rd, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Nay, the motion carries. Next, in our agenda, we have public appearances for non-agenda items. Do we have anyone in the chamber?
No.
No? Okay. What about Jennifer Clary? Is she here?
No, she was going to be traveling, Julia, so she wasn't sure if she'd be able to zoom in or not.
Okay. Next in our agenda, resolution and ordinance. We don't have anything for today. But next we have a presentation called Workforce Housing Endowment Pilot Program that is going to be presented by Mike Harrigan and Mr. Steve Appelfoker. I don't know how to pronounce your name, sorry, Steve. So they are from H&A Advisors LLC. So some of us already, we saw this presentation last week on September 14 when we had the meeting, the combined meeting with the Housing Committee, and it was a great presentation. And I think it's something that we want to move forward. With the pilot and continue with the feasibility study. I talked to the mayor, and he's on board with that, and the money for the pay for the feasibility study is coming in the budget. So this is what I wanted to have that discussion here because some of you didn't attend to the meeting last week, and you didn't have the opportunity to see. This is a great pilot program for the city, and I want to have your feedback, and I think, what do you think about this project? And then, if we agree, move forward, and so we can tell the mayor and the rest of the council that we want to continue with this. So this is what we invite again, Mike and Steve, to give us the presentation to the city committee. And since we are housing authority, we need to have some, we need to have feedback on this. So, okay, so that's it. So Mike and Steve, it's all yours now for the presentation.
All right.
Thank you for coming here at 7 o'clock.
Well, thank you, Julia. We appreciate the chance to be there, and it certainly makes it easier to do it for us by Zoom. But we still enjoy being there in person. For those that don't know me, and I think I know most of the folks on the screen here, but I had the pleasure of serving the city of Fitchburg for many years as a financial advisor with the Ellers Company, and I retired from them in 2018. After that, I began thinking about with my partner here, Steve Affelbacher. Steve was the president of our company at Ellers. He retired a year after I did. I served as chairman of the board for that company for a long time, and then a good deal of my work at that in my latter years with Ellers was focused on economic development, tax incremental financing, and looking at helping communities raise money for their economic development initiatives all across the state of Wisconsin. And in doing that, I realized that many of those clients were struggling with the the need to address their workforce housing needs. And I began to think about the way in which they were doing that, and the fact that there were some tools that we had been making use of that could be combined into a program that might help some communities with a certain type of a product, which, if done correctly, could be self-sustaining, meaning that it would be an endowment type of an initiative and could be repeated again and again for the community. And so Steve and I worked on this model. We spent about the first year on vetting this thing with a variety of experts throughout the state. We had it reviewed from a legal standpoint by the Von Briesen firm, make sure that we could execute it as we were thinking about it. And so today what we'd like to do is present the outline of this for you so you can think about it. I think as you hear what we've got to say, we would encourage you to keep in mind that this is what you'll be hearing is an outline. We've deliberately created the program in such a way that it's flexible enough, we think, to adapt to the specifics of any community's situation. And so as part of, if we were engaged to assist in doing a feasibility study specific to Fitchburg, a good deal of that effort would be involved in customizing and tailoring this more particularly for you, and the exact metrics and parameters that would be targeted would be based upon your perception of needs for your community. So I don't want to take a lot of thunder away from what we have to say in a minute. Steve and I are going to tag team this presentation, and I'm going to attempt to get my screen shared so that I can show you the slideshow, and Steve is going to begin the slideshow. Let's see here. There you go. And then and I'll kick in a minute. So Steve, why don't we go ahead and begin?
Sure. As Mike had indicated, both he and I have done a lot of work in Wisconsin. I started in Wisconsin in 1979 with doing tax increment work, and has worked there since then as a municipal advisor with Mike and various projects. And as we retired, we thought it was important to address this issue of workforce housing. We were continually confronted with that as we dealt with clients. It was important to attract employees for employers, but the question is, they're driving an hour and a half, and what can we do to handle this? And so Mike and I have had a variety of experiences through our careers. Mike's been a city manager previously. I've been an elected official. I've been an HRA director. We've combined all these thoughts to develop this as a solution then that the community can attempt to address this issue and tailor a specific program to them. It's unrelated, but it can be combined with either state or federal monies that would be potentially available. But it's really a program that you design, that you decide how to make it work. And we thought it was important, once it was designed, that it's an endowment concept where we can continue to use the funds for other projects in the future. And that's important because I think all workers have that whole American dream of home ownership, and it's one of the major ways that individuals build equity for their financial future. Mike, you want to flip the page, please? And you know, as you know, and I won't get into a lot of detail, but generally speaking, most income for families should be about 30% used for housing. Given the cost of housing and the costs that have gone up, there's a gap that exists. And what really happens is that individuals, because they're paying 30% of their home ownership costs, end up renting. And renting isn't a long-term solution if you're trying to develop equity. This gap then is something that communities as yourself are looking at. Mike? So let me just kind of give you a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about and the elements of the program. Mike is going to go into more detail specifically, but in terms of our approach to the rent-to-own program, What this is a concept where individuals, renters, would be screened, and they would rent, and after some period of time, they would be in a position then to buy the home and convert that then to owning the home. And so as we develop this program, there are a number of participants in this program that are important. The municipality plays a very key role because they're going to design the program, the targets for incomes, whether it's focused on new construction or rehab, whether it's focused on townhouses, condominiums, single family, all of those elements would be part of a study to look at to say, what's the income target, what's the focus, what potential sites may there be available, and trying to develop a financial model then that would be a representation of what we would expect to happen. The home municipality also would provide the initial equity and may support with financing the specific project that we have. So that equity is really the key. They have some equity in the program or cash in the program to help with the program to get it going. So that's the responsibility of the municipality. The CDA, as you would be once the program had been designed by the municipality, would be in a position to execute the program. And we had envisioned then that this project would be owned by the CDA. They would be responsible then for whether it's reconstruction, new construction. They would be responsible for managing the facility. And they in turn then would be responsible for screening the tenants that would be using the property until it's sold to them. The other key element is the renter. Our models, we've done a variety of these based on certain data, have projected then that the that the tenant would own the facility for 4 to 8 years. And then at that point, when there's at least 20% equity, which would allow them to finance in the commercial market, that unit then would be sold to them and they would repay the CDA and the municipality for those funds, plus some upfront costs. And Mike is going to talk a little bit later in terms of a specific model that we developed for Fitchburg to give you a sense of what we think potentially can happen, and give you a feel for how this might work. In addition to that, the program includes really a management company. We don't believe most CDAs are going to be in a position to want to manage this project. A qualified local builder and other sponsors such as major employers, other municipal entities who may help in the equity generation that's necessary for the project. So Mike, you want to flip the page? And I'm sure that all of you are aware, we did take a minute to look at the 2019 housing study that was done by Cedar Corporation. And as you recall in that study, and this program is consistent, I think, in terms of what your overall efforts are, is that there's a desire to have more affordable, accessible, desirable housing. The average price in 2017 was over $325,000, and only 5% of those at 80% of median income would qualify for any sort of housing that would be available within Pittsburgh. So clearly there was a need for it. As the study was developed, there were certain goals that were identified, and one of those was to target new ownerships for housing units within the range of 174,000 to 217,000. And in the example that Mike is going to be talking about, we used 195,000 as the building cost roughly for the housing unit in the model that we used. And with that, then we can talk to you about how the program works in terms of dollars that potentially would be available. We understand tax increment districts 4 and 6 in 22 and in 2023 would potentially provide some equity for a program that we're talking about. So Mike, let me turn it over to you.
Well, we talked before about the flexibility of the program, and dwell on that. But I think you'll find that as we get into it, you'll have some questions of what target audience you want to serve, what type of structure you may want to provide. All of this can be adjusted. It's important that this be something that there be recognized need for on the part of the community entities. So that means the employers, we think private foundations and community foundations can play a great role. We specifically wanted to make sure that this particular program returned dollars back to CETA in this case, so that it could replicate the program again and again going forward. And you know, there are other programs out there that do a great job. A good example is the Habitat program. It's very popular across the country and certainly in Wisconsin. But that generates the capital and then provides the investment sold to the tenant, and that's that. And then start over with regard to raising the initial capital. This provides for recycling of these funds. We think that there is still a real desire to own units on the part of young families. It is not for everybody. We understand that a lot of people prefer to rent, and so it's very important that the program screen the tenants, make sure that they have an appetite and are motivated for the ownership experience. We also have attempted to design the program so that it is not going to fall back in the lap of the taxpayer. We think that there are some safeguards that we built in that we'll talk about that help to ensure some of that. In beginning this program, we think it's important that the tenants coming to the table will have some skin in the game. We think that it is important that they provide some upfront equity. We have a model that calls for $5,000. Again, that dollar amount is adjustable based on the community's desires. But in our model that we'll talk about today, we use a $5,000 upfront participation level that is provided by the applicant. The balance of the equity needed is going to come from the community or from an employer or from a foundation. And the amount of equity that is ultimately determined is really driven by the fact that we don't want the tenant to have to pay more than 30% of their income for housing. And that means both the mortgage as well as the costs associated with it, which would include utilities, taxes, or payment in lieu of taxes, any condominium type fee or any other costs of that nature. The sources of the equity dollars could come from the one-year extension, and we know that you've talked about that in the past in Fitchburg, but that allows you to capture the dollars from the retiring tax income districts, which can be used anywhere in the city for affordable housing. The surplus tax increment revenues in certain qualifying districts could be made available. We talked about private contributions and any other municipal cash contributions. Steve?
Yeah, and I know that question is where how does this all tie together from a numbers standpoint? And this is a typical example of sources and uses for the program. In other words, where the source of funds come from that Mike had talked about, and then how are those funds used? Mike's going to talk about specific numbers to you in your community, but this generally is what we see in terms of the mix of funds that are necessary. There is some debt component. In the example that Mike is going to be looking at, we've assumed CDA debt is issued for this, but it could be loans from a group of local or one in particular local banks that would provide the debt equity. And part of the analysis would be determining what's the best approach to provide that. There would be some equity that would be necessary so that the debt could be supported by the revenues from the tenants in the program. And that equity could be from a variety of sources that you'll see there, and which includes then equities from the tenant, TIF monies, other community partners that would be available that would make up those various equity sources that would be sufficient then so that rents from the project would pay the debt that would be outstanding. In terms of use of funds then, there's a component in there for site acquisition as well as construction. Mike will break that down in regards to the numbers that we're using today. Second, there's program costs to set the program up, as we talked about, which would be the housing study that would be necessary. There would be fees related to the program in relationship to legal opinions, other potential consulting fees that would be necessary to establish the program. And last is we've factored in then a debt reserve into the program, and as Mike talked about, to try to minimize the impact on taxpayers, that debt reserve would be funded then to provide a first, if you want to call it, source of funds in the event the rents were not available to make the payment. So that's typically what you'd see as the variety of sources that would make this up. So Mike, if you turn to the next one, please.
Well, Steve, if I could just add on regard to the sources side of the equation, when you show debt as being a major component here, Fitchburg is somewhat uniquely positioned because of the fact that we do have potentially in excess of $6 million, as we understand it, coming into play as a result of the closure of these 2 tax increments. So that's really a policy call, and it could be all done with cash in lieu of debt, which gives you much more flexibility, and more so than what other communities would have if you chose to use that alternative. So I just throw that out there as an additional consideration.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Mike, is that we're not locked into any particular formula, but need to really look at various combinations of options to tailor this to your specific situation. So the Housing Authority then would secure the units in terms of the site, if it's a rehab project or build new ones. That can be done then through taking proposals from qualified builders and selecting them, whether it's rehab or new construction, and we could certainly help with that process. In addition to that, then they would have to, we believe, generally want to retain a professional management company. The CDA could in fact manage it themselves, but in the program that we've designed to talking about the specific numbers in a minute, we did retain a management company, which would be responsible then. We think education is an important key to this, to one, selecting the right tenant and then educating those tenants. And as we talked about, screening those tenants, collecting the rents, and if there's a water leak or the toilet's plugged, manage the units as necessary. So that expense has been built into the numbers that we'll be talking about. In addition to that, then the tenant would pay sufficient rents to pay then the financing costs, and we've designed a pilot program, in other words, a payment for taxes, which would be then Pittsburgh's share of the taxes that would be paid by the tenant until the buyout point. The monthly rent then would be collected by the management company, and in this particular case, in the model Mike's going to be talking about, we had used 80% of medium income, or area medium income, as the rent then target that we had that was designed. We find that a lot of these programs are designed for 40% or 60% of medium income. There hasn't been a lot for that 80% or 80 to 120%, and we think that the program that we've come up with works best when we target 80 to 120%. In this particular case, we're assuming that all of the tenants in the project are at 80%. If it's higher, the numbers will work a little bit better. At the point of resale, then, to point out the original equity that's been put in by both the municipality and the authority will be repaid, is the goal, and in addition to some additional upfront costs. The tenant then would have sufficient monies, as we talked about, to generate their 20%, to be in a position to refinance the project and buy the units. Now, there are other programs out there that could reduce that 20%, that would help make the program better. To be conservative, we've assumed a 20% equity was necessary for that buyout. So, Mike? Last, then, before Mike talks about the specific numbers, I wanted to give you a feel for the timeline. We've seen really, I think, 3 phases to that. There's the feasibility and the execution phase. We've estimated that to be, 1 to 2 years in terms of designing it. So it's good that you're giving this consideration now with your TIF revenues closely on the horizon within that time frame. The rent portion then would be once the project's up and running, tenants have been screened, they would be renting, managed by the management company, could take anywhere from 2 to 8 years, which accumulates that equity that's necessary to refinance the unit, or for the tenant to refinance the unit in the commercial market as we've developed the model. Can be other programs which would help, but as I mentioned, we've assumed that 20% equity is generated. And last then, the refinancing occurs, and at that time, the renting tenant is converted to a homeowner. They own the unit. The CDA and as well as the municipality gets their funds paid back, and those funds would go back into the endowment program that's created for another project, and we project then that's within a 4 to 8 year period, depending upon the numbers and how the program is designed. So Mike, do you want to walk us through the numbers then and the example we came up with?
Thank you, Steve. The model here that we're showing you today is predicated on a project in Fitchburg, constructed in Fitchburg, that would consist of 10 townhouses, side-by-side type unit construction. Again, these would be intended for ultimate single-family ownership. We have targeted the income segment for this example, utilizing 80% of the median family income, and for Dane County, that's $75,360 for a family of three and a half people. This is a HUD data, the most recent HUD data that's available. We've indicated that we would not want the tenant to have to pay more than 30% of their income toward housing, and so that means out of that $75,000, $22,608 annually would be dedicated for housing. We'd have to cover the mortgage, payment of taxes, as well as utilities and management fee. We have estimated the cost per unit of these 10 units to be $226,800. Now that's about $185,000 hard costs and the other costs that are associated with the financing, etc. We've asked the tenant, as I mentioned earlier, to have put down $5,000. The balance of the equity that would be needed would be $17,000 coming from the Community Development Authority's contribution, typically from the tax increment fund. That would allow for a mortgage of $204,800 at 2.9%. Is the cost of the mortgage that we would be targeting in this particular example. How does that break out then on a monthly basis, and how does this work out at the back end of the deal in terms of the ultimate sale to the tenant? We have estimated that based upon an appreciation factor, we're using a 1% appreciation factor per year in this model. We know that that's low compared to what we've seen in Fitchburg, but we're using a 1% appreciation. We're assuming that at the takeout point, for a conventional mortgage loan, the tenant would have to pay 4% for a 30-year loan. We're assuming that that tenant's wages increased by a factor of 2% per year. We're assuming that that value grew from its original $226,800 to $238,000 by the 5th year. And what happens at that point on the takeout, on the resale, if you will, back to the tenant, is that As a condition, we would expect that the Community Development Authority would receive its money back. The original $17,000 in equity comes back to the CDA. We have to pay off the original loan if it was made by the CDA or whomever, and that balance at that point in time is $183,000. And that leaves the difference between those two numbers and the 238 leaves residual equity of $37,572. We expect, in addition, as you'll see from some of the numbers, that over and above that number, there's an additional $20,379 accumulated from the difference between the tenant's income and the actual cost of the mortgage and the other related costs that I described. So we anticipate that the bank is going to expect a 20% down payment on takeout. 20% of the $238,000 is the $47,674 a year that would come out of the residual equity and accumulated surplus, leaving an additional $10,277 to be repaid to the CDA. So the CDA is giving it $17,000 initial downstroke back, and it's getting an additional $10,277 based upon how the numbers play out and work at the end of the day. So let's look at the overall picture from a monthly cost standpoint in the beginning and at the fourth year. So on a monthly basis, the tenant's income starts out at $6,280, and after year 4, it's $6,798. 30% of that is $1,884 and grows to $2,039 by the fourth year. We take out from the $1,884, we take out another roughly $670 for a condominium fee, a payment in lieu of taxes, because during the rental period, this will be owned by the Community Development Authority, and as such, it's tax exempt. But we are accommodating a payment in lieu of taxes back to the city to cover the city's share of servicing costs for the community. We're also deducting a management fee and utilities and insurance. That leaves $1,215 for a mortgage payment. The actual mortgage payment is $860 based on that 2.9%, the mortgage that we talked about. And that leaves a monthly balance of $356 that accumulates and becomes a part of that $20,000 that I talked about on the prior sheet. These numbers adjust again over 4 years, but essentially the takeout, we expect the mortgage to cost $910. That still leaves them some balance and margin, and we expect that they still would be paying no more than 30% of their income for rent at the back end of the takeout sale. So what's the benefits here to both the community and to the potential tenant? Well, the program works as we're proposing. The 10-unit housing project ends up at the back end with a taxable value of $2,383,000 that goes on in perpetuity. We expect that the CDA will receive back a total of $170,000. That's $17,000 per unit from the initial equity downstroke. And then we have the additional $102,000 coming back from the residual spread on equity that is going to be paid back. That's $10,200 per unit that I showed on the prior slide. The tenant ends up with the house, a property that's worth $238,000. They end up with equity that they didn't have. They had $5,000, now they got $47,000 in equity, and they still are only paying 30% of their housing, 30% of their income for housing. a very important consideration. Now, I will tell you that the other thing is that we targeted 80% as the 80% and above up to 120 as being the segment to serve. And the reason we did that is because there are other programs that many of you are probably familiar with that are out there to serve the lower slices, and those programs are a lot of the housing tax credit programs that are available and have been taken advantage of. But having said that, you can go lower. You could go to a 60% level if you chose to do that. It would just mean that you'd be able to serve fewer units using the cash and capital that you had available. What do we need in order to get the program off the ground? The tenant cash is, we need $50,000, that's $5,000 per tenant. We need $170,000 for equity, and there's a $2,115,000 that can come from cash or debt, either from public or private lending, public or private funds. The ownership would be executed in this example by year 5. We ran this on the basis of a 10-unit townhouse project. We've also run single-family examples on both rehab and new construction. We can certainly do that also for Fitchburg if you prefer to see strictly a single-family type of structure. This is where the committee's work comes in, is helping to, as I say, tailor and design more specifics of the program. We wanted to give you a flavor for it today, just to give you an example of the fact that mathematically we've run the numbers for this type of a structure, and we think it has the ability to be executed. Steve?
Yeah, so thanks, Mike. As you can see in Mike's example then that specifically we've looked to see if it works mathematically. We believe it does, but the numbers aren't the only thing that makes it successful. It's clearly an important part of that. The other success really depends on, are there other partners that are willing to participate as financial supporters within the project? Again, part of the housing study, if done, would be to look at that specifically. In addition to that, the program really needs to be reflective of the community's desire in terms of the percentage of income that they'd like to help, the design of the program, all those different criteria we've made some assumptions at, but they're flexible in terms of us working with the committee and seeing and tailoring them to design a specific program that would be then the program that would be implemented within your particular community. Also, it's important to have reputable developers and a management company that will manage this. We certainly want to make sure that that management company is there and does all of the elements that we've talked about that we believe are necessary to both start at the beginning, educating, screening, as well as selecting and managing the projects that are there. And careful screening of those tenants by the management company is going to be key, because there are certain tenants that expect other people to fix the leaky toilet or the water. You really need to have a tenant then that has a desire to own and a desire to really achieve then that home ownership dream that I think is important in America. So that's a quick overview of what we've put together. We think that if there's an interest, we'd certainly be willing to help look at some of these elements of the program, and through a feasibility study that would be conducted to really further tailor what we've developed as an initial step in terms of how the program would work. Mike, you want to turn that next slide then? As we've talked about this, both Mike and I have been looking at how this would work. We believe that the idea works. We have not had a specific success, but we think all of the elements are there to make this work. These are some of the individuals that Mike had mentioned over the last year. We've been vetting this concept. It's not to say that they endorse this, but we use them as a resource and ran our concept by them to really tailor this and see where there may be pitfalls and how we could make this a more successful program. And so We just wanted to give you a flavor that we've really done our best interest or our vetting of this to design something that we think makes sense and will work. So with that, Mike, any final comments?
Well, I think we've given you our presentation, and we really want to answer questions more than more specific presenting on any detail of this. But we think that there's an opportunity for Fitchburg to choose to want to take advantage. I think this does a couple of nice things. One, it doesn't rely on, I mean, you could use other programs in conjunction with this, state or federal, but it doesn't require other outside funds, which has some of its own advantages in that it gives you the ability to probably have more control over how you want your program set up. It also is the type of thing that I think is highly adjustable, not only in terms of the way it's structured, but on the pace that you use to fulfill it and to execute. So I don't want to take more time than you've got for us than budgeted this morning, but I do want to leave some time for adequate questions. So that's our presentation, Madam Chairman. I'm going to stop the screen and ask if we can answer questions.
Okay, any question for Mike and Steve?
Julia, I think my question more is to you and Mike Z is, where's the city sit with this? I think it's a very interesting proposal. Where you said you've already seen this presentation, so where's the city with this? And I'm looking both at the end, I saw houses and I saw townhomes. Where are we? I see a lot of construction going on around the city, but I don't think I see any of this. So just a question.
Okay, so I want to give you my personal opinion, okay? That, that I really, it's something that I think this is a great idea. I think it's a pilot. I think, we need to do something about affordable housing in the city. Last year, we spent a lot of money in developing the housing plan. We created a housing committee. So if we have all these tools, we need to determine what is next. And I see this pilot, it could be something, thinking outside the box to determine how we can bring that affordability to the city of Fitchburg. It's something that we need. And I think, we are going to be using tax incremental money that, the council has decided that we are going to keep open for a year, the tax incremental district, and that increment we are going to transfer to the housing fund. So we have two very successful tax incremental districts that they are going to be closing in the next year or two. So, and I think this one fit perfectly because in two years we are going to have around $6 million in the housing fund for the closing of the 2T, tax incremental district. And then we have 2 years to do the feasibility study and to have our housing toolkit ready when the tax incremental, we have access to the money in 2 years. So we have the program ready to go. We don't have to start in 2 years from now thinking about this. So, and I think this one is, the time frame fit perfectly. If we start working in 2021 with this project, Mike and Jeff can go to the table and work more options, work the number, because some of these numbers, you talk to developers, they're gonna say, nah, it's too, how many square feet we're talking. I don't think that $230,000 is, So there are a lot of things that we need to work, and this is what I said. We need to think. I don't want to go granular with this now. I want to think like a 30,000 feet. That this is a great pilot, and then they are going to do the feasibility study and be granular and come to us with a more tangible product. But the idea is it's time for the city to step up, to think outside the box, and to work other options, because, and I think this one is a pilot, as I mentioned, and I think we can be pioneer with this thing, you know what I mean? That one is my personal position. There are some money in the, that I have mentioned before, that the mayor is on board with this project too. And there are some money that we allocated in the budget, the mayor allocated in the budget for 21 to continue working the feasibility study. That is money not coming from taxpayer, it's coming from the housing fund that we had from a previous tax incremental district that we closed, and there is some money there still sitting there. So day one is my personal perspective. I have been very involved in the following the housing plan. I heard the feedback from some people that they want to try to move to Fitchburg and they cannot do it. And we have a lot of renters, people in Fitchburg that they cannot move to the next step because we don't have the inventory, for that 80% target, we don't have inventory in the city right now. And I agree with you, we are building a lot of road, a lot of, but it's time that we step up. That one is my personal opinion.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank Steve and Mike also for the presentation.
And Mark, if I could just add, we have $10,000 in the proposed 2021 budget for the feasibility study to continue kind of progressing along in anticipation of trying to design a program so when those hopefully TID increment dollars are available in 2022, 2023, we would have a program kind of designed and ready to launch there. And so that's some of the work that would be done over the next 1 and 2 years, looking at that feasibility study. And as Julia pointed out, those dollars are coming from our affordable housing fund that was capitalized through tax increment district number 3, the small one that we had on North Fishhatchery Road. And we think Fitchburg is ideally suited for a pilot program like this with that townhouse product and really kind of reaching that 80% of median income. That's a product that we've been missing since the last recession. And that used to be kind of our entry to ownership for people that were looking to get into home ownership, but we just haven't had any really inventory of that product kind of come online since that time.
Thank you to both of you. Again, this has my support to look at what you're trying to do now as far as being ready to go, Julia. I think that's the key thing is let's keep looking at this. It is out of the box a little bit and let's try something different. So thank you, guys.
I have another question for Steve and Mike. When you talk about the cost and all of that, the other thing I was thinking sometimes is very hard for first buyer is the closing cost. So maybe that one should I don't know if you have talked about that, consider this, but maybe closing cost would be another thing that, that is, I would say see that because the money is going to come from the fund, the housing fund, something that we can put in the equation, how we can help people also with those closing costs.
That's a good consideration, Julia. The advantage of our proposal is, in part, that the way we laid it out in the example this morning, it would be the CDA who would have the role of the banker in so many words. If you use the bank, you can use the bank, and in that case, you're going to have some other closing costs, which would add to the equation. This, you can kind of control your own costs. You're going to have some costs associated with some legal and some recording fees, which we've accounted for.
Oh, yeah.
We've accounted for that, but the rest of that is manageable. On the financing vehicle that is ultimately chosen, but That detail certainly would be provided within the presentation of the feasibility study that would be conducted. Steve, any other thoughts on that?
No, I think that makes sense, Mike.
Any other question?
Yes, I have a couple questions.
Who's that?
If, this is Dan.
Oh, okay, Dan, okay.
If I understand correctly, Steve and Mike have not implemented a plan like this on their own, is that correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Have there been any other communities in the United States that you're aware of that have instituted a program like this?
There are a couple of programs. One of them that we researched is run out of Milwaukee, and it's a for-profit entity that does this type of a program. It's run by an individual that used to be the executive director of the program, the ACTS program in Milwaukee, and he went on and did that. It is a smaller and more targeted type of thing. There's a program in, I guess, it was Ohio, I believe. But we found 2 or 3 other similar type of programs that are out there across the country. Rent to own is not completely unique. What we think makes this unique in our case is that it allows the way we've structured it, nobody else is doing it to allow the money to keep flowing back to the municipality. This is a program. This is why we call it the endowment, an endowment concept, because the cash was anteed up front from the Community Development Authority. That tax increment money continues to get recycled as the individual units are sold out to the private tenants.
Yeah, maybe if I could add, I think from our standpoint, the elements that we thought were important is the pilot program, payment, the payment in lieu of taxes that was a part of this. And in some programs, nothing is paid. And as Mike said, the endowment piece is really key to this. So it comes back and it's recycled. The other program that we were aware of was in California, or another program was in California, but it was really a private individual that was allowing an option. You could rent for up to 3 years, and then you had to buy the unit. And it was really an option to buy at a fixed price, and you pay the rent until you get to that point. So that to us just didn't work, because it didn't provide the funds back, and it didn't really target a specific family income area that we thought would be important within the community.
Yeah, the name of the company that I was referring to in Milwaukee is called Strong Blocks, LLC. You can Google it and find it. It's called Strong Blocks. And that program, it doesn't recycle itself. And those dollars, if their residual funds, are retained as profit to the ownership.
Do we have any idea as to the number of families in Fitchburg that are in that 80% category that do not own a home? What's our target?
Go ahead, Mike, if you want to answer. Or...
I don't necessarily have that information in front of me. We'd have to do more research on that.
I believe your housing study touched on that. And I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but I think the housing study specifically called out that segment as being underserved.
I have a few more questions. Just bear with me a minute, please. I'm curious. I know that on Sain Road by they've built a number of townhome type structures. which seemed to be sold immediately. A couple of them on Sain are already up for resale, and this is the last couple of years. Those were selling for about $3.25, $3.40. Well, what kind of construction are you going to have for $195,000?
Well, we can only tell you that what we did do in our research when we were putting the numbers together, we went to several builders that do work in the area. Most notably, the Gorman Company is one of the resources that we used, and we identified what our per square foot cost was at that time. Now this goes back 6 to 9 months, I guess, when we had our last conversation. But the numbers that we were using were consistent with what they felt in both in type, size, and quality that could be delivered in that market. And this was for the Waukesha County market, which is not dissimilar in terms of cost from Dane County.
And I think we were in that 1,100 square footage range in terms of just size of the units.
Okay.
All right, then I have a couple more questions. If, in order for this program to work, it would appear that you need some significant participation from employer, public or private foundations. Has there been any work done to see whether there is an inclination to participate by employers or public or private foundations? Or is that part of the study to be conducted?
Yeah. Short answer for us is that we have not undertaken that as of yet. We would certainly see that that would be an important part of the feasibility work would be needed going forward.
And I think we would see that as important to the program, although not a necessity. It certainly could be done without it. We'd prefer to see it with it, but that would be part of the feasibility study.
I think one entity, Dan, that's out there, Lori Heineman, our partner at the Madison Development Corporation, they've just launched a workforce housing fund that involves contributions from some of the major corporations in the greater Madison area, including, I think, AmFam and Findorf. So that might be one that we would look to start to collaborate in a partnership with.
How did you determine the kickback to the municipality at the end of the loan? What is that a percentage? Is that just based on what's left over after your calculations? How do you come up with that number?
Yeah, it's strictly based upon what's left over. You know, we for this example, there could be other places to go with those funds, but we assumed that after paying costs, all monies over and above costs were retained by the municipality.
Any other question?
Yep, one more.
Okay.
On page, I can't tell, the monthly housing cost summary per unit, you have a balance, the last entry on that page is balance for purchase reduction. Year 1, 356, year 4 after sale, 255. Is that earmarked, that balance for repurchase reduction, is that earmarked to buy down the mortgage or the debt, or is it not earmarked at all?
That's not earmarked. That's the same money as that $10,277 in total cash that's coming. We show that coming back to the CDA. We really look at that in some respects as your margin there in terms of your shock absorber or safety cushion for unknowns that could come up during the program. We think both on the side of the tenant as well as on the side of the community, it's helpful to have some shock absorber in the design of this. So that's really what that's intended to be. And if we're lucky enough that everything that we put down here turns out to be exactly the way it turns out, then that that's capital. Effectively, CETA has the ability to decide on how best to utilize at the end of the day. But these numbers are I think they're good numbers for given the level of detail that we put into this thus far. They're based on practical information that we obtained from reliable sources that are in the industry, but they will require a lot more vetting as part of the next step of this process. And so it's good to have some cushion.
Thank you, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any more question? Okay, so thank you very much, Mike and Steve. Mike, what is the next step for this? We have to wait until the budget is approved to move forward, isn't it?
Yes, and on the agenda item for today, Chair Julia, you had asked us to have kind of a consideration down for action by CETA if so inclined. So if CETA is inclined to just have a motion in support of to encourage council to support the budget item to be able to have a feasibility study in 2021, that could possibly be a motion to that effect.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Remember, this is a pilot program, so, so we are trying to evaluate different options here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Okay, the motion carries. So, okay, thank you very much. We are going to continue with this. I think this is a great, option for the city, and let's see what happens. Okay?
Thanks, Mike and
Thank
Steve.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye.
We
Bye.
hope to be able to work with you going forward. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye. Okay, so next in our agenda, we have a presentation from the hotel room tax report consideration, and Misty is here. You received the room tax report in an email. So, Misty?
Yes, thank you for having me. So I have some bad news to share with you as far as what the second quarter room tax looked like. But overall, I would say that CETA's done a really good job of constraining your expenses so that while that revenue is quite a bit lower than what we had even hoped for, overall, you're still sitting pretty good financially. So this first part of the report shows that quarterly history of the room tax. So you can see the second quarter of 2020 is the $41,548. That's a little over $100,000 less than what we received in the second quarter of 2019. So it was a 71% drop from then. So even though first quarter was not too bad, I'd say second quarter is where it really hit CETA's budget. The one thing that did help a little bit is we had an additional online room tax payer come on. So you'll see over to the left where I've got the 2020, it was at 7%. It's now up to 9 locations that you guys are collecting from. And that one location that we just added is actually a conglomerate of a few different online hotel sites. So that helped. It was about $10,000 that you collected from that particular provider in the second quarter. So that helped. So the next part of this report is the allocation of that 41,000. So a big part of how this big drop can be absorbed by CETA is because we do have that contract with the chamber that 70% of what you collect is passed on to them, and it's 70% regardless. So it's not a set dollar amount that you're required to provide to them under contract, it's a percentage. So they actually are struggling a little bit to balance their budget, and I know Mike had an update for you in that respect. The next section of the report is the blue section. I'm going to actually make this a little bit bigger here. So the blue section is what I would like to call the operating part of CETA. So this is where most of your expenses come through. Overall, you're at about a $16,000 loss as of the end of August. The biggest account for that is that from timing. So through room tax, we've collected through June 30th, but your expenses you've spent through August 31st. So the bulk of that difference is made up by the timing difference. So overall, considering everything that's going on, I think that's pretty reasonable. And again, CETA has done a great job of constraining what you spend your money on because you have a smaller amount coming in. The next section is the red section. This is the sports commission money. The big thing that's coming out of here is the design or feasibility study for the neighborhood hub. And you'll see at the very bottom, that project is almost done. There's just over $2,500 left to be spent on that project.
I asked a question there, Misty, or you want us to wait to the end?
No, go ahead.
This is more for Mike, and it goes back to my work with the chamber too. Is there anything going on about there was going to be a skateboard park come online in town? Is that dead? I know it's not a secret, but is that dead now, Mike?
Yeah, that was the one that was looking at acquiring that, what would you call it? Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of a different one. Sorry, Mark. We haven't heard back from Nick on that concept at this point in time. They were kind of doing their feasibility study, and they were talking to some landowners, but we haven't heard anything from them recently.
I just didn't know if it goes under there or not.
Yeah.
So then the next bucket of funding that CETA has set aside is for signage. That's the $39,000. Nothing has been spent or allocated at this point for that, though I know there is a project coming in the future. So we'll continue to set that aside in that separate bucket. And then the purple section is the revolving loan part, and we've added that business boost or biz boost program that CETA authorized. So the $150,000 was taken out of the city column and moved over to the biz boost column, which is the amount of money that's available for those loans. As of the date of the report, which is the end of August, there were 2 loans issued, one for $10,000, one for $7,500. So you can see we have $132,500 left available to a loan out to businesses that are eligible. We did just have another round, and then there'll be continuing rounds through the end of the year. And we won't start getting payments back on these funds until 2021. That was part of the program, as the payments were deferred until the next year. So then overall, your fund balance by type, you can see the categories here. Again, considering everything, a $16,000 loss that can mostly be accounted for by timing is pretty wonderful, considering you had that $100,000 drop in your revenue. So big kudos to CETA and to Mike for really looking at your budget and seeing where you could restrain. That's all I have.
Thank you, Misty. Any question for Misty? Okay.
Hey, Julian, I would just
Yes.
give a big shout out to Misty and the finance department for not only working with us and CETA, but the entire city budget here, managing this through this situation this year and the CARES funding and everything. I'm not sure how they're holding it all together, but they've kept us on a good fiscal path and everything with all the uncertainty and the crisis that we're dealing with. So great job, Misty and the finance department.
Thank you, Mike. I'll pass that on to everybody.
Okay, so next we move to the next item of the agenda is you're gonna give us an update about the Forward Fitchburg Boost Loan Program, Mike?
Sure. As Misty indicated, we've got 2 loans out there already. That was Heritage Catering and Soho Noodles. And the loan committee met, we had received 8 applications for our September 15th deadline. Some of them were not eligible because of some of the program requirements like employment and some other parameters there. And then a couple of them we're working with to see if they can give us some updated financial information that then maybe they would be looked at again come the October 15th round. So out of the 8 right now, we've got 1 more approved, and that's for Dwellings, the interior design group over there in the Orchard Point area for $10,000. So we'll be processing that. And then there may be 2 or 3 that might potentially come back from this group if they can provide us with some updated financial information and answer some of the questions that our loan review committee had regarding the applications. And then, of course, there could be new applications. As Misty pointed out, we've got a rolling deadline of the 15th of each month through December. So we've got October 15th, November 15th, and December 15th. If you know of any businesses that need some working capital and assistance, please encourage them to look at the program and the eligibility, and they can submit applications yet. Any questions on that one? Otherwise, just a quick update for you on the temporary premise expansion permits. We've got a couple of our restaurants that are operating under that program. Tapatios, Me and Julio, Heritage Catering, and Flying Hound all have expanded outdoor premises. And the one thing that the council did, working with us in those businesses, we extended that from, it was supposed to end right after Labor Day, and we're allowing them to go now all the way through to November 30th. We figure that there's a lot of nice days here in the fall with the weather, and so if the weather cooperates and it's nice outside, hopefully that helps them with some expanded business during this period. So that program continues to go forward, and the businesses are very appreciative. And one really neat thing about it is Heritage Catering, by them setting up their operation, they now are proceeding with a permanent location here in Fitchburg in the building where they have their catering kitchen. So they're going forward and working with the Plan Commission on that. It's going to be called Heritage Barbecue and To Go there, and it's going to be kind of like a butcher shop, and then they're going to have a limited number of seating in the interior and everything there. So it's a great concept, and we're excited to see them go forward with that. Can I keep going, Julia, to the next section? Okay, a few more updates for you, some things that are going on. We've submitted the T-grant application for Lacey Road. This is an employment-based program, and it's we're trying to get another $1 million to help with the Lacey Road reconstruction that'll happen from Verona to Seminole Highway in 2021. And the employment that we're using, it's $5,000 per job, up to 200 jobs for a maximum of $1 million, is the Sub-Zero expansion with their engineering design center right along Seminole Highway, and then with the Promega manufacturing facility. So today I'm going to be submitting the jobs guarantee, and it looks like WISDOT staff will be recommending to their supervisors that hopefully we qualify for another $1 million to help with that project. That's also important to help us with our tax increment district number 9 over there. At this point, we do not have the $1 million factored into that. So we're hoping that once I send in the jobs guarantee today, in about 2 weeks, we'll be notified if we're successful with that application and award. And if we get this one, this would be our $4th $1 million that's helped underwrite some of our major infrastructure and road projects. We got $1 million for Spoke and Sprocket, we got $1 million for Sub-Zero Parkway, we got $1 million for Fahey Glen, and hopefully we get $1 million now for the Lacey Road reconstruction. A couple of other things that are coming up. The Badger State Trail Bike Bridge is nearing completion, and we're hoping that that'll be ready for opening next week, Wednesday, September 30th. So we've been very limited as far as being able to do like ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings, but we're hoping to do a small event for this next week, Wednesday. So I'm working and finalizing some of the details with Public Works, but once we've got that organized. We'll get the rest of the details out to the group for September 30th of next week. I know that's something that our community and the biking population have been looking forward to seeing open up. The Verona Road Business Coalition, with the completion of Verona Road and our McKee Road construction, that'll happen yet at the end of this year. We're planning to have a Verona Road Business Coalition recognition volunteer proclamation on the council agenda on October 13th. And we're kind of doing a virtual Zoom celebration with that group. So just in recognition of all their efforts over the last 7 years and a lot of the volunteer hours that were contributed to that program. And then at the end of this year, we will be dissolving the Verona Road Business Coalition entity legally there. So we'll be just winding up and going through that process at the end of this year.
Mike, I have a question about that.
Yep.
But I know that they are going to continue working with the fish hatchery project.
Yes. Yeah.
So I know that Cindy is going to be working. So because I haven't seen any report or any from them to determine how everything is going with fish hatchery and what are the things that they have seen, and you know what I mean? So can we have a report about, because
Sure.
the fish hatchery program, the first phase is going to be closing out at the end of November, I think so.
Sure.
They're going to close. So
Yeah.
can we have like a report to see, you know, how this fish hatchery road affected some of the business there, or what are the, you know, because like they were doing with the Verona road, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, no, I'll get with Cindy and get a report there. And as you might recall, originally that project was supposed to be all done in 1 year, and now it was stretched out into 2 years.
Yeah.
Greenway to Traceway this year, and then Traceway to McKee next year. So we did an amendment through the council there to extend Cindy's contract through 2021. It's still for the same overall dollar amount. We just had to extend the time frame on that. But I will get an update from Cindy on Fish Hatchery Road, and we'll get that out to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Then another update that I sent out to the council yesterday, disappointing news that Sue's Hallmark Shop will be closing at Hatchery Hill. They're having a 50% off sale right now, and the final date of their closure is to be determined based on the sale and inventory and everything there. The other thing that potentially impacts is our postal contract station there. But I talked to John, the owner, yesterday, and even though he's closing the Sue's Hallmark, he's hoping that he would continue to keep the postal contract station open. So he's been in communication with the U.S. Postal Service, and he's also talking to the Hatchery Hill Management Company and everything about the details of that. So he's going to keep me posted on that and let me know if he needs any assistance and coordination from us, especially with the U.S. Postal Service there. The contract station is a contract that he has with them, so it's not like he can just transfer that to another person or another entity. If he would decide not to continue with it, then it kind of goes back to the Postal Service, and then they would open it up for other people, but there's no guarantee that then it would continue. So that's where we kind of get involved. When years ago, when we lost the contract station, when it was part of the hardware store at Fitchburg Ridge, it took us multiple years working with the Postal Service to get a contract station back in Fitchburg. So we really need to monitor that situation to make sure that we don't lose the contract station. So John said that he would keep me in communication as he continues to work with.
But can I mention something? You know, you can do in the U.S., you know, the UPS store in Fitchburg. You can buy stamp, you can deliver package, you know, since that one is another alternative.
Yep.
With, you know, the postal service is gone, because I am using the UPS store for all of my packaging and even buying stamp and sending, you know what I mean? So,
Yep.
you know, so there is an alternative. At least we are, you know, in case that they close.
So I'll keep.
Mike, this is just go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. You go ahead. I'll chime in a second.
No, I was just going to say I'll keep you updated as I learn more from John.
My comment relates to, you just reported there's a lot of money in the forward business Boost Loan Program. And again, Sue's Hallmark going out. It was a very nice store if you've ever shopped there. The key is, do we know any more that are on this cusp that aren't going after the money we have available? I mean, that's only having 2 applicants in a city our size with a lot of small businesses kind of befuddles me. And I don't have an answer, but I'm just saying, do we know any more businesses that are kind of sitting there saying, are we going to be able to stay open? Are we going to have to close? That we can help intervene with this loan program?
We've been trying to stay in communication with some, and we know a few more that we've been encouraging to look at submitting an application that are kind of in that situation. So far, we haven't received some applications from them, so I'm not sure exactly why at this point in time. Maybe we need to reach back out to them. A few more have inquired, and so it might just be a timing standpoint that maybe we'll see some applications from them come October there, but we've been trying to keep our ear to the ground, and a couple of people have alerted us to some businesses, and then Joyce and I reached out to them directly to make sure that they had received the loan application materials and to answer any questions. So we're trying to stay on top of it as much as we can.
But there are other businesses that they already closed, like a Pump It Up, iCombat, there are more business closing.
Yeah.
So.
The other one is at Breakaway Sports. I believe that facility is for sale.
Yeah.
What we've also been doing is trying to then work with some businesses to refill some of that space, like the Pump It Up space. We think we've got an occupant that's going to take that, and we've been marketing the former iCombat building to 2 particular uses that are looking at that space. But there's a lot of activity and flux with businesses and with real estate right now. So it's a tough environment out there for people. The longer this goes on, the more hits we're gonna continue to take.
Thank you.
Myers, the CDP has been approved. We continue to work with them on some of the architectural design details of the C-store. One thing that they're kind of struggling with right now is they went to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a sign variance consistent with the sign variance that Super Target and Hy-Vee got, and they were turned down. So they're struggling a little bit. Their executives are, that's a big issue for them, so we're not sure where that'll go next. Quick Trip continues to do their due diligence for the corner of East Sherrill, the southeast corner of East Sherrill and South Saline Road there. So we're waiting for them to conduct their due diligence on the contamination on the site, and then also kind of align their plans with our Saline Road reconstruction and upgrade for 2021. And then we've got, we're talking to multiple senior housing developers that are have that product in the continuum of living and care, where they have independent units, assisted and memory care. So I'm talking to about 4 different groups right now with multiple locations around the city, but we're hoping to kind of land one of those and find a spot that works for them and works for us, because that's a product that we could use some new inventory of here in Fitchburg for our senior population. The radio station property here at the southwest corner of Fish Hatchery Road and Lacey Road is for sale, and it's just under 14 acres there. That includes the radio station building as well as the towers that are there. And so we had a Zoom call with the listing brokers last week and also the station manager. Right now in our land use plan, that area calls for it to be low density residential going forward, but we've had some conversations with them. We realize that that's a prominent corner at a signalized intersection here in Fitchburg, so there's probably going to be interest in looking to take that to a more mixed use, kind of a higher level of density, or at least a medium density there with a mix of uses on that possible 14 acres there. In the radio station world now, the towers, the technology allows them to kind of co-locate that technology and some other towers, so it's not a hurdle as far as them, relocating those towers. Do you have a question, Julia?
Yeah, so you mentioned that corner, the zoning is low density.
It's the current zoning on it is rural development on most of the acreage and then business professional, specifically the site where the office building is. But the future land use plan designation currently identifies it for low-density residential. So if somebody wanted to bring forward a plan to change that to, let's say, more mixed use and a medium density, they would need to go through the minor comp plan amendment process.
So that one is my question, because now is the time, we have 2 times in the year to make amendment to the comp plan. And my question to you is that if, there is another opportunity before the year close, if we can put an amendment to the comp plan to change the zoning for that lot.
We've already shared that information with the listing broker and with the station manager and even people that have inquired about maybe acquiring that property and being the developer. We've already shared that information with them. So it's just a matter of when there's a developer, we usually don't do comp plan amendments without there kind of being a developer that wants to kind of lead that request for an amendment.
Yeah, but my question is if we missed this time, okay? We made the second one, then is that we have a developer coming at the beginning of 21, then we cannot do an amendment until when, August?
No. There will be one probably here in November, a cycle, but then we'll do another cycle again in April, just like we did
Yeah, in
this year.
April, so this is what I said, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you're right though, if we start the process, let's say we start around in April, it's not completed then until August, it's, a couple
Yeah, and
month
this is my
process to
question,
finish
like,
But we're
signing and-
trying to communicate that information with everybody, and we did encourage not only the listing brokers, but we also will encourage any interested developers. It's unique at that corner. The actual real estate is in Aldermanic District 4, but then right across the street north on Lacey Road, we have Aldermanic District 2, and then right to the east across Fish Hatchery Road, we have Aldermanic District 3. So we just shared with the listing brokers, and we will with any interested parties to make sure that they do the proper communication outreach not only to the alders, but we also mentioned the various neighborhood associations too. We're really going to need somebody that kind of works through a collaborative process and communicates very openly and transparently with the community and also with our elected officials for any changes that they want to kind of propose through an amendment there. Any questions on that? Did I send the listing out to CETA for that property? No? I can send it out to you just so you've got that information so you can see the details and everything on that one. And then lastly, I'll mention the movie theaters. As you know, they're closed right now. The group that was operating, New Vision, has ceased business operations there. So we just got a word last week that the previous operators, AMC, is kind of the lease guarantee of that facility. The real estate, the land and the buildings are owned by Realty Income Corporation, or REIT, out of San Diego. So it sounds like that AMC now will take back over operations of our theater. So between building inspection and myself, we're reaching out to AMC to establish contact, both from a property management and maintenance standpoint, and then I'm trying to reach out to them to find out and kind of coordinate details on hopefully a reopening plan of those theaters. AMC does still operate the theaters here in Madison at Hilldale, so they do have a presence here, but we just want to kind of reestablish the connection and communication with them, because I know that's something we've been getting questions about from our residents in the community, the future of the theaters there. So I'll keep you posted as we learn more on that. Any other questions on developments or activities?
Yes, I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So where are you, Mike, with the mask? You're in the chamber? Okay.
I'm in the council chamber. Dan's here.
Oh.
We got Jeremy and George from Fact TV.
Oh, okay. So my question is, do you have any update for the big, housing project on Fish Hatchery Road?
The 3101, the former juice plant site?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, that's proceeding well. They framed the fourth floor now, so I think it's on schedule and everything. The Traceway Drive extension into that property is in place. They also did the Traceway kind of upgrade of the intersection to the west there in front of the Highline Senior Apartment, and they actually accelerated that project to get it done because they're in the height of their leasing season yet to kind of lease up that building. So that was an effort that Cindy Yagi helped really coordinate with Bill Balke and Public Works to get that shut down quickly, but get it done and get it back open again. And I know David Plesko and the folks at EJ Plesko were appreciative about that quick turnaround and the coordination and communication, with them. So that's an example of some of the troubleshooting that Cindy's been helping with in that role and capacity there. But I talked to Mike Thorson just last week, and I owe him a phone call again today. We're chatting about multiple things. He's one of the developers of the 3101 building, but it seems like they're on track for kind of their opening of June of 2021 for that building. When you see it, if you haven't driven Fish Hatchery Road and you kind of see it, it really starts to set the framework in that corridor with the High Line on the west side and 3101 on the east side now of hopefully the character of development that we want to continue to see kind of going north from Traceway up to Greenway Cross.
Yeah, so my other question to you is, do you have any update about that corner of Post and Fish, where you have all these houses and, any...
I'm talking to multiple developers, not only about the southeast corner of Post and Fish Hatchery, but also up at Greenway Cross and Fish Hatchery Road. We're trying to identify a development partner that would kind of lead a redevelopment concept up there. And I've got two interested parties that I've kind of talked to in the last 2 weeks. I'm hoping to have a Zoom call between them, each individually, with then Scott Harrington from Vanderwall. And then if that goes well, then we would schedule a Zoom call between those interested developers and the 3 property owners up there. So we're continuing. In fact, I just was with 2 people last night that I was talking about that project in particular, and that was one of the reasons for our meeting last night, is trying to identify a developer. I also walked the west side of Fish Hatchery Road with the developer 2 weeks ago that might be interested in the west side, and now I'm talking about the properties that include the Bowman Plaza, the church site, Popeyes and Wendy's up there, and their particular interest came from a contact that I have, but one of the reasons they're interested on the west side of the road is because it's in the opportunity zone census tract and designation. Fish Hatchery Road is the dividing line of that census tract. So they now are doing some due diligence. We walked all those parcels. I gave them all the information. I gave them the vision for Fish Hatchery Road, the tax increment district project plan and everything. So they said they would take a couple weeks and then hopefully they'll be circling back with me on their interest level up there. But they would look to do something like a multi-story mixed use, kind of commercial and residential out there. The other thing that's out there is on the south side of Greenway Cross. This is west of Egaman. They're north of the Maple Lawn Apartments, the ones that were completely renovated by that Royal Capital Group. There's 2 16-unit buildings there on the south side of Greenway Cross that are up for sale right now. So we've talked to a couple of different developers that might be looking at those properties to do kind of a complete renovation of them. It wouldn't be a redevelopment of the property, but a complete renovation. But it would be more than just new carpet and paint. It would be carpet paint, new kitchen cabinets, new bathrooms. Hopefully they would also do the in-unit washers and dryers. Remember, we toured those units on the north side of Greenway Cross where that guy did a complete redevelopment of those. It would be a similar kind of redevelopment on the south side as well. So it would get some of that 40 to 50-year-old multifamily housing stock at least, updated and renovated to more current standards here.
Hey, folks, I need to check out. I'm sorry, I've got another commitment, so I think it's been a good meeting, so I'll talk to you all soon, but believe it or not, I have another commitment this morning, so talk to you.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we are almost finishing the meeting. So my other question, Mike, is what is your, have you talked about David Greber about The senior housing there is, what is the percentage of occupancy there? Do you know about how they are doing?
At the High Line?
Yes,
Yeah, no, I don't know, as far as their occupancy. He said, the last time I talked to him, he didn't give me any percentages, but he said that it was a little sluggish, and they thought that
Okay.
because of the road construction and seniors kind of getting there, to
Yeah.
the tours, that's why they were really concerned when we were shutting down Traceway, and they were hoping that we could turn around that very
Okay.
quickly there. I think they've, he told me that they did some rent adjustments and modifications to kind of drive traffic to the building there, and to get that building, leased up and everything, because it's a beautiful building if you.
yeah, no, I know. Have you
Pictures and
heard about the issue that they have with the golf course, that some of the balls hit the cars that they are parking?
Right, I think now they're looking to do something with some kind of screening or netting
Okay,
there, yeah, to
Okay.
account for that. We had encouraged them, when they were developing that project, to consider that on the front end, because we thought that might be a problem and a
Yeah.
concern. And now that it has become that, I think they're looking at some kind of remediation and effort there to change that.
okay,
One other thing
So,
I'll mention
yeah.
for the next CETA meeting, and we will have one in October, is I think Angela will probably be coming to our meeting as our tourism entity here, and there may be, we may be having you consider an amendment to our contract with them based on an amendment that they may have looking at kind of 2021 for their contract with Destination Madison. So stay tuned for the details on that. But we will be having an October CETA meeting for that.
okay, so anything else for the rest?
No, and the mayor's proposed 2021 budget is out, so
Yes.
you could take a look at that online.
Yeah, take a look, and if you have any question, let me know. I am planning to put some amendments to the budget. I always do it every year. So take a look at the budget and let me know if you have any question or something that you want to, something that is not there, and how we can, put an amendment, something like that. So what else? That's it? We're at the end of the meeting?
Yeah, I guess just on the development front, senior housing continues to progress behind Super Target. That's the high-end resort-style senior living. Jacob Klein should be proceeding with his workforce housing behind Hy-Vee. He reduced the density of that from 133 to 116 and put it all into one building. And that's allowing him to kind of make the economics work for that project. So we should see that go forward. We also have the Limerick affordable housing over on the east side here. It's kind of north of Lacey Road, just to the east of the railroad tracks and Syene Road before you get to the roundabout over there. That's going to be 100 units of affordable senior and 26 multifamily units of family there. They did get WIDA tax credits and everything for that project, so we should see that go forward. And then we're getting some activity and interest in some of that land in Uptown, now that Central Park Place has been extended to the east from the roundabout there to the railroad tracks to Uptown Crossing. It opens up the Holmes and Osborne land to the north there. And so we're starting to get some development interest in that particular area over there. So hopefully it helps to drive some additional development in that area. Some of that to the north is more of what I would call that T3 product. So the area that Dan Hardy was mentioning, where we had the Viridian development that was done there at Syene Road and Clayton Road, would allow for probably more of that type of housing product to go there. And right now, that's kind of our most affordable price point in Fitchburg as far as new housing and new construction there. And Terra Vesa is going gangbusters. They're coming in with their second phase already, and I know Julia was on a tour of that Forest Edge Elementary School. I tell you what a jewel that is for the community, and it's just going to be a magnet for that neighborhood over there. It's the first net zero school in the state of Wisconsin, and it's really going to be an indoor-outdoor kind of education and laboratory experience for those kids, everything from the woods to the north and, you know, the wildlife that they see there, but it's also going to give the students a chance to kind of see a neighborhood actually develop, because you have a really good view and vista from that school of the whole Terra Vista neighborhood as it develops. So pretty neat for the kids to experience that.
Okay. So, and I think that was a great idea to put a school in that development, because that one was a magnet for, yeah, especially young family to move there, because, and then you have the daycare, Mariposa, you have everything in your development, you have kids. So I think it was a great idea, a smart idea, you know, how it was done. So kudos to Phil and his team, and, you know, but, you know, if the school, there is Fact TV also did a recording of the taping of the school, so you have the opportunity to take a look, because the school is, I don't know, we were with Mike in the tour and I say, oh my God, nothing compared to our days. So
We want to go back to school.
I think it's great. So, and the other thing is, maybe we are trying to have another tour with the Verona High School too.
Yeah.
That one, because, you know, some of our, you know, we have the Verona School District, it's part of the city of Fitchburg too, so we want to show people how that high school, you know, is coming. Well, it's already done, and it's sad that students cannot be there, but yeah. So that one, I think that bring people to our community, you know, especially our city, to have that sort of, you know, even though we don't have our own school district, I think I always say we have 3 excellent school districts. This is how I sell Fitchburg, you know. So, okay, so that's it for today. You know, so thank you very much. So I need, thank you, Mike, for all the updates.
Sure.
So next is I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. So thank you very much, and see you next month.